We not only care about where the earthquake is happening, but we care a lot about the size of the earthquake, because the size is going to tell us how much damage is likely going to happen. But we have two different ways to measure the size of an earthquake, and these are our intensity and magnitude scales. The intensity scale was created first. Before we had a lot of technology and really complex equipment, the way that we measured the size of the earthquake was just by looking at how much property damage was caused by the ground shaking. So if the ground shook more, it's going to cause more property damage. It might topple over a house instead of just breaking off a couple of limbs from the tree. But more recently, we've developed this magnitude scale. And this is a quantitative measure. So instead of just saying the ground shook a little bit more and it shook the house more, our magnitude scale is going to give us an exact number of how much energy was released in our earthquake. It's a lot more scientific and a lot better at looking at the differences than just asking people how much do you felt like the ground shook in your area. The intensity scales have been used for the longest time. Throughout most of the history of humans, we didn't have enough technology to say exactly this much energy was released. So we used these intensity scales to see how much the ground felt like it shook. And the most recent one is this modified Mercalli intensity scale that was developed in the early 1900s. And you can see it here on the right. It's going to go from really weak earthquakes that might be felt only by a few people that are sitting down at rest in the upper floors of their building, and it can go up to everyone runs outdoor. There's some damage in buildings of good design. Some poorly built structures are completely destroyed, and it ends in total damage. Everything in the area has been destroyed. But you'll notice with this intensity scale, there's no number. It's very relative and very subjective. We don't use it a lot anymore, but the USGS, or the United States Geologic Survey, still uses it, especially with citizen scientists. People like you that might report that they felt that the ground was shaking due to an earthquake in their area. They can log into the USGS website, say where they are, and using this scale say, I was sitting down and it felt like it shook in my 5th floor apartment, or the ground shook so much I ran outside screaming like a little baby. Now that we have much better technology, we prefer to use these magnitude scales, the ones that are more precise and come up with an actual number for how much energy was released in the earthquake. And the most common magnitude scale that we use right now is called the Richter scale. If you turn on the news after a massive earthquake somewhere on our planet, they'll say a magnitude 7 on the Richter scale. This scale is giving us an exact number for how much energy was released. But we're going to see that this scale is logarithmic. So instead of increasing 1, 2, 3, 4, it increases on a tenfold basis. So 1, 10, 100, 10,000, etc. is going to increase a lot very quickly. So with this logarithmic scale, we see that every time we increase 1 unit on this Richter scale, so from a magnitude 1 to a magnitude 2, that magnitude 2 earthquake is releasing 32 times as much energy as our magnitude 1. So each time we change a magnitude unit, we are releasing 32 times as much energy as we were in the magnitude before. But the issue here with the Richter scale is that it's good for small and medium-sized earthquakes, but it's not good at describing really large and really destructive earthquakes. So as long as we're talking up to like maybe a magnitude 7.5, our most common earthquakes, we can use the Richter scale for that. But if it's a really large, incredibly destructive earthquake, we're going to use a different magnitude scale. And this magnitude scale is called the moment magnitude. And this is going to look at a lot more factors. It's going to look at how much energy was released based on the amount of slide that happened, how much movement was there in the ground. It's also going to look at the entire area that felt movement, as well as the types and the strength of the rock beneath the ground. So these, it takes longer to figure out exactly the number of how large or how small it is. It can take weeks to figure out our moment magnitude because it's just a lot more complex. It's looking at a lot of different factors, but by doing so, it's a lot better at looking at the size of these really large and really destructive earthquakes.